And he's playing like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, yes, you know. He's like, no, I got the drill. And she showed up. I'm like, how do you?
Yeah.
Oh, he knows. He knows.
Yeah.
He just likes to be silly.
He does.
It's funny because, you know, it's got there's other characters in there. And so, like, it's not all him. I'm like, there's nothing I'm trying to say. I'm like, are you trying with that? Is what I want to say.
You all can get to see what I want to say. 8% of it. I get
Oh, no, we
9%.
know. Mr. Davis and I look at each other every day after class, homework classes, and we're like, God bless her. God bless her.
That's why when I say Carson, they tell me certain things you do, and I believe it. I live with you majority of the time. So they ain't nothing. You know, yeah.
Yeah, he'll be like, what, talking? I'm like,
Okay.
you don't have a minimum volume. So
Yeah, he don't.
everybody can hear you.
Yep.
Get this.
So he just needs his information. I'm gonna email it to you. It's my finishing my work.
You know, outside, go there outside, and poster, and they have the QR.
Oh, outside.
I don't know what. Which one's it for? The CCC, the container, they're right here.
Okay.
I think there's a QR code right there.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Go guard and
I don't know how many it is. Well, no, I don't want to something. Yes, you know, that was, you go there, I'll show you.
Yeah.
They have to, teachers didn't have it. They have to write. There's one right down, if you go out this door and go down the hall straight from here, there'll be a little. Is that open? What, the bathroom? They are. Put my stuff in my.
So
Which
The
one's gonna
public-
be?
public comment,
Yeah, is this one Midtown, the big one? Or not?
yes.
So what I was thinking was, we'll start the Zoom, she's already on, I just see her. And then I told her we would unmute her when it's public comment. Good, how are you?
I know they're trying to start.
Yeah, well,
Wait, that's a bottom. Where? She said 55 minutes. It's been a hard.
Is it last week?
My backpack. This is my backpack, APS, or Atlanta Public Schools. I never remember.
Everything's, you know, set.
Yeah. streaming.
straight. And then. I'll be here when it's time to come. I better when we start.
Yeah, I don't really know. Logistics.
There's so little, I don't do that.
It should work.
And I could chat. It needs somebody to take 60 minutes. Depending on the.
And when you have like a flyer, you know, like, I don't have, yeah, but it's just there, you can the name and the email, everything.
There's a couple in the folder.
Yeah.
Oh. All right, well, here it was saying that. There's a microphone, but I guess we don't need a microphone because we're not going to comment, we're not going to reply. She'll be.
Right, yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I have to monitor. They can put it in the chat.
That's what.
Whatever. They need to tell us.
Oh.
And how are you?
So you wanna know?
Barnard College or Columbia University. I'm playing early season for Barnard College.
Oh.
So Barnard is, it's in Columbia University.
Inside. Okay,
Okay, face it once.
It's, okay.
So they can't do that.
Yep. I usually. I just need to get to the top of the bar. Exactly.
The application.
Okay, so. Chief. Tracy will not be here, so somebody can take minutes. I can send you the minutes form. She emailed me last night. Budget minutes.
Just today, I promise.
Yeah, just say
it's not. Tracy can come.
Okay. You can- I see. Miss Tanner, I just sent it to you. Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to Midtown's Go Team meeting where we will follow the agenda as it's been emailed to you and publicly noticed. I would like to remind everyone that this is a meeting of the Go Team. Only members of the team may participate in the discussion. Any member of the public present are here to quietly observe. For members of the Go Team, please identify yourself when you speak. I am pleased to call this meeting of the Midtown Go Team at 4:06 p.m. Our first order of business is to call roll. 6, 7, 8 voting members. Yes. All right, this team will only be able to take official action if a quorum is present. Is there a quorum present? There's 8 voting members, so that should be yes. Okay, yes, there's a quorum. All right, we will proceed to the action items. Okay. All right, our first order of business is the approval of the agenda. This was provided to you, copies are here. I've slotted to you. Okay, this is provided copies here. Are there any changes to the agenda? So the first 3 are action plans, the discussions, and announcements. No changes? May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstention? Nope. Okay. We will review and approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. The minutes have been provided to you on the website, so. Summary. So we'll go back to the summary. We didn't have much as far as minutes go. But we had, here's who is present and absent, and then we did the following items. The minutes, are there any corrections? If there are no further corrections, may I have a motion to approve the previous meetings minutes?
Motion to approve.
Have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Yes, same. Okay, our first action item for today is okay, is a grade, change the grade minimum. We will have a discussion, but we have to move to discuss it first and then we can vote. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve this item for discussion? Yes. Okay, a second? Second. All right. It has been moved and seconded. Now, is there any discussion? And I will turn to Dr. Bob.
So, hello, everybody. Nice to see you. I'll just say we've had a lot of great, exciting things going on the last couple of weeks, especially here at Midtown. We'll go into all of those, but Mr. Tanner will talk about a few. We get this thing and had great homecoming activities, great homecoming game that we won in the last second, and I do mean the very last second of the game, which was incredible. And then we had an alumni dinner right after the game that was really great and just really good. Last couple of weeks are really lots of school spirit, some good stuff. So what I wanted to talk about here is possibly us looking at a school-based solution. You know, anybody's been on the go team before, you know, that's an option for us to look at things that we want to do a little bit differently. That's the whole point of the charter system that we have, the APS charter system. So, so as a school, we've been looking at how we grade equity, how we assign grades, why do we assign grades to, how do teachers determine all that. It's a really good time to do a review of that. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is a minimum, so a grade minimum. So what I mean by that is, right now, of course, we're on a scale of 0 to 100. And so you all know 90 to 100, 80 to 89, 70 to 79, and then anything below 70 is basically health, right? You fail. So that's a big, and at 0 to 69 is a very large span of the percentage of a kid's grade. And so we were looking at, and there's no policy in APS actually that prohibits this. And it seems in some of our research that it's, I'll say up to individual schools, which makes me a little nervous, but it's true. You know, I like to operate within some guardrails, but it seems that we could, as a school, adopt 60 as the minimum, or 50, or 40. But I'm just looking at 60 as a possibility as the minimum. So students would not have a grade below 60. The reason for that is, you know, as we look at students over the span of 4 years, there are many students here that this is never a problem for. They're very well equipped when they get there. Parents that are very supportive and have been supportive since birth, with all kinds of enriching experiences, things like that. And many kids come very, very well prepared here to tackle a rigorous curriculum, regular set of expectations. But there's also quite a few students that is not the case. And so I feel like that, and it's true that when we start looking at the kids that fail, which happens in 9th grade, when you look at those students, a lot of them, they immediately start failing, gosh, by like September 1st. And a lot of it is because of missing assignments, the volume of assignments, the rigor of assignments, 8 classes, they're not used to 8 classes from 8th grade. And so once you start behind, getting behind, you start failing, it is really, really, really hard to catch up in this school. That's all I can speak of in this school, because you all know missing assignments, then they start piling on each other. You miss one in one class, it's 8 missing assignments. And no matter how much tutorial, no matter how much Saturday school, it really becomes a problem. And where it becomes the problem down the line is what I'm concerned about, graduation. Because it really affects a child's GPA. And that affects money, it affects scholarships, what schools you get into, GPA, that kind of thing. And so we've been thinking about having a floor of 60, 55, 60, so that students don't get, and we're talking about students that by September 15th have 42 in a class and 32. And I looked at report cards all last week, and I see some kids that have 7s, 0s, and it is impossible almost to the pass. To bring a 63 points to get to a 70 is a lot different than, you know, if you're trying to move from 68 to 70. This change would not necessarily impact kids that are making the hundreds and the 105s, and that's not what we're talking about. We're really talking about kids that struggle, that it can just be completely demoralizing, especially if you're a 9th grader, and by September 10th, you basically almost failed the first semester. So it's something that we can do. So I'd love to hear some discussion from you all, some questions, some things from your perspective about this possibility. It would be us just I would like to just get it formalized, even though, you know, I hear schools can decide that. I would really like it formalized if we decide to move forward with the district. I mean, that is really, because, you know, I look at the graduation rates and, I don't know if we want to get into that today, that might be the next meeting in November, but the graduation rates, really fluctuate greatly from school to school. And so I just, you know, we're kind of struggling to keep ours at, and we're at 86 now, which is, you know, so, so anyway, thoughts, and we have a student here, does Mr. State.
So where I'm thinking about is long-term ramifications for how we are training students. Something that I feel passionate about, and I have always felt passionate about, is that the difference between, I know this coming, I went to top schools, and when I got to Georgia State, I was extremely unprepared for like college, just how the rigor of how it works, all of that, and just trying to keep up with everything. If we now say that a student can only, their lowest grade can be a 60, that's not, in my opinion, preparing them for what's about to come. Because we know most of our students from Midtown, they do go on to college. We have a select few that go into the workforce and that do, you know, other things. However, we want to make sure that we're setting them up for success. I think as opposed to doing a floor like a 60, my personal opinion, I think that we do too many grades per semester. I think that, I don't know if that's an APS policy that we have to have 18 grades or 1 grade per week, but that's not resemblant of what happens in college either. I don't think there's any college class where I had 18 grades. You know, so I think that rather than their missing work is piling up because they have 8 grades per week in every class. So why not have half of them? Then they can actually catch up, because at the end of the day, I mean, if the kid has a 7, they have a 7 because they do the work. So, I mean, they got to do the work. But I also think that it's too many graded assignments, and it's assignments that, if you really look at it, it's like, this really didn't need to be graded. Like, you really didn't actually have to do this. It's just something to meet the criteria of us having to put 1 grade a week in the grade.
So if you say that 18 grades is too much, which I'm not going to dispute, my next question would be, then if you move more towards like a college setting, that's what it sounds like you'd like to do. What happens in a college setting, you may have a midterm and final at that point. And then if you're a student that, let's say, doesn't test well, you bomb your midterm, the only other option you have is your final at that point. So now you've got kids in corners to where they went from having, because the weight of those 2 things are going to look very different. But if they bomb one of those or 2 or both of those, then that may not mean that they're the worst student in that class. Maybe they're not a test taker. Maybe they had a bad day that day. I don't know. But that puts them in a really bad position to possibly pass the class if we've now taken away the majority of the grading and set it up more of like a college course. Because at that point, that's a lot of information to compile into and be ready for a midterm. I mean, I think maybe if the conversation is, can we look at more meaningful ways to get grades opposed to being an educator and just saying, well, I have to have a grade week. So I'm just randomly giving them whatever, just probably shouldn't have a grade on it, but being more meaningful in what you're counting as the grade per week or whatever it is, whatever the policy is, but moving towards more of a college setting, I think may hurt a lot of students. Because that first year transitioning into college, a lot of students have difficulties because it goes from, like you say, having all of these grades to not having but maybe 2 or 3 grades throughout the whole semester. And then once they bomb, then that's it. So that, I mean, that's just devil's advocate.
I don't think we need to have that few grades. I definitely, I personally don't like that format even for college. I don't really support that. But I think we need to find a happy medium in between 18 and like 2 and 3. I just think personally, because you got to multiply 18 times 8. So many assignments that kid has to now complete. And if anything happens in their life, any adverse event that happens, they're behind and they're literally struggling to get caught up. And you have a class like mine, like they're definitely not, like my class is definitely not go to the wayside. They gotta get their math homework. They gotta get their ELA grade up. So it's just, to me, it's a little bit of, like I said, it's a little bit of overkill, but we also don't like Tyler was saying, we don't want to move to the point where the kid has to remember 9 to 18 weeks of material and then gets graded on that, and that's all they have in grade book. You know, that most kids actually aren't going to do well with that.
If you change the grade minimum to 60, what is the actual grade? So like, you know, like 100 to this is an A. So what would this?
So 60, up to 69 is still, you're not passing.
Okay.
So that wouldn't change,
Okay.
I mean, it's still an F, if you want to say
Okay.
that, it's just, that's the lowest you can go. Like, say a child doesn't turn anything in, it's not a 0, it's a 60. You know, I mean, it's a philosophical thing, I mean, a lot of people have a problem with that, you know, with that.
I think the problem, I guess for me would be is if they're not doing anything and they do, it's kind of setting them up for, to me, it would be setting my child up for failure because I'm giving him a false perception of what he has when he hasn't done anything. Instead of trying to come in and integrate something into what he's doing to see what the problem is, why you're not getting, because yeah, it's not just like Stacey said, when I graduated high school, I wasn't prepared. When I walked into the college setting, so I chose to go to a 2-year school to kind of figure it out for myself, and then I went on to my 4-year school, and it helped me. I think by leveling that grade to a 60 is giving a child a false perception that they're doing better than what they are, and their motivation is going to continue to deteriorate. Because when you give them, when you say, okay, we're just giving you a 60 because you really got a 70, we're giving you the 60, they're not going to aim any higher than that because they're going to look at it as like, well, I don't have to do anything. I'm going to get a 60, even if I'm failing. So I think it's kind of, it might be in hindsight, it's setting them up for failure in the long run. I'm always looking at the big picture versus the small picture. The small picture, yes, we're guiding them through, but the big picture is they're not going to be prepared on the other hand. And then we're putting them into a world that they're going to need that basic education to prosper or to get a good job or to sustain themselves. But in the short run, we're giving them a false perception when giving them this grade instead of trying to figure out what the problem is to help them get to this point.
And what if the grade minimum is lower than 60?
I
I'm just asking. So, you know.
I wouldn't. I disagree with taking it any lower than that.
I mean.
Well, Dr. Bachman, is there research on this?
Yes.
Yeah, so what is the research? Okay.
But there's
Long term.
the support, yeah, there's, and like she said, it's one of those things that like even I grapple with and I've read about, and I think all of us have is, you know, how do you find a happy medium between all the zeros? And then give them, you know, that hope. You know, when the students sit down, they do these assignments, you know, they see that grades start going up, then they get motivated. But like she's saying, they see all these zeros and they're done, you know, but there's research.
The question in the chat.
Okay. They can't comment. They can't comment. It's not public
Yeah,
comment.
Not all.
They can do public comment.
Just Tim. And then there's Rick.
If I were a student, if I were a student that was always doing my work, I would feel offended by this policy. I think that a 60 is too high. I think maybe a 40 or something might be better. I think a 60 is just a little bit too high. And I also think another thing that might be good is to add some types of time management skills classes or something like that that all freshmen might be required to take or something like that, so they can understand how to prioritize their time. That's the end of my statement.
And we are definitely talking about that for next year for study skills class, not college success, just study on, definitely a semester long study skills. How do you work for 9 credits? How do you organize? How do you get your life together with 8 classes? There would be some time in there for working on assignments for sure. But it would be a very dedicated study skills class. Not for every 9th grader, but definitely for students that anything will need. You know.
Mr. Staton, that is him.
I was just gonna say, that pretty much, I just think that we have to really look at who this is affecting. And this policy, we know who the majority of the high school achieving students are. We know who the vast majority of the low achieving students are. The vast majority of these low achieving students that are failing class are going to be our Black and brown students. So I think that implementing a policy like this, where like as I forget your name. Ms. Montgomery, just stated, it's giving them this false perception. And we all know that there's no secret, Black and brown students have to work twice as hard just to level the playing field and be successful. If I'm that student and I'm told that all I need is a 60, and I walk into my first year of college thinking, I'm straight up good. And then next thing you know, like I'm getting blown out of the water by these other students because I haven't experienced the same rigor and push that I needed to be successful. I know that a 60 is technically still failing, but there's nothing like when you look at your grade report and you see that 7, you know that 7 is representative of what you haven't done. Like I said, I think thinking like this Montgomery big picture, I really think that kind of policy could definitely have an adverse effect on our Black and brown population, which is already they're already struggling. So I'm all for looking at something like this, something to help support them. I just don't necessarily think that may be the best direction to go.
I agree. I think that we're dumbing it down at that point, and that's unfortunate. I do think that population of students that would require, the majority of the students that would require, or you would be looking at, would be your Black and brown students, and I think that sends a false hope. I think we need to set them up and give them the tools to make them successful. So at that point, we look at what other things can be done, because the reality of the situation is you make it 0, it can be 60. There's the same group of students are going to be there. So at that point, you have to have the discussion of what other supports can we put in place to make them successful, because raising or lowering the number is not going to change it. Because most of these students probably aren't even anywhere remotely close to a 60. The bulk of those students that require that support. So at that point, you're talking about what can you put in place to make them successful. But I don't think it's fair to dumb it down.
Would there be a way to flag even after, a week or 2 weeks or something, really quickly? It's just not turning their stuff in, doing poorly on everything, to just really get in there, before it's the next semester.
Right. And we do restore around the 4.5 week. So after 4.5 weeks, Labor Day, this year, Labor Day. And we do this all the time. We really start focusing on who we're talking about, what's the issue. Really start pushing the tutorials, start pushing on Saturday school, which we're starting. Really start looking at those kind of interventions. Really hitting the tutorial. So So don't think that we don't do this all the time. It's a full course effort all the time. I mean, I think there's a multitude of factors that go into failing. There's time management, executive function skills, absolutely. There's the fact that 8 classes is a lot for some kids. 8 classes is a lot. It's also the grading, the amount of assignment 1 a week. So we are, and is some of that's behavior also. So you're actually grading on behavior in a way. Turning in an assignment is a behavior, not because you're not. That's all you're grading on is you got 0 because it's missing. So there's that school of thought of you shouldn't be grading behavior in an academic way. You shouldn't be assessing that. It's all over the place with. I just want, everything I do, I kind of try to run through this word fairness. What's fair? Fair. So
Your special ed students.
special ed students actually have a lot of support. It's not the special ed students that are failing. It's not. Because they have a ton of support. That's right.
I feel like whenever it comes to discouraged students, I think if anything, seeing a 60 in the grade book rather than a 0 would be more of a discouragement to do whatever assignment that is. If a 60 is a missing, it's still higher than what was a 0. I know from experience and from a lot of other peers, you see a 0 in the grade book, you want to get on that as soon as possible. You see a 60 and it's like, it's better than not to grade at all. And sometimes a 60 is a student's best. So knowing that if a 60 is a student's best, and students that aren't even trying are getting a 60 as well, if that were me, I would feel terrible. It's like, why did I even try? And by making it easier, it's honestly like the parents said, it's kind of insulting to the students that are doing all this work and doing their best, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be that far from passing anyways. So I understand the motive, and I know that there's a lot of discouragement. I feel it myself now, but a 60, I feel like that's kind of given to us because we need to understand responsibility and everything. And if we have a low grade, that's on us, of course. And I don't think that that's something that's a responsibility that should be taken from us. Because if we don't do it, we can do it. We shouldn't get a grade for that. And then we can do that. But without that little pressure there, we won't ever learn.
One of the things we're also looking at is looking at what are we taking for grade. And so we're really looking at in your grade book, you really should only have two big categories, which is formative and summative. Okay, summative is the end, formative is what you use all throughout the semester. That a student learns from that, like information on the essay, feedback on the essay, that's formative. And so we've really been looking at how can we use our grade book better to actually give more information and help students along the way. That not everything is taken for grade, and then it's that we're because and you can manipulate the grade book. That's not a good word, but you really can. A teacher can manipulate it to say, okay, I'm putting all these things in, but they're just information. It doesn't count for a grade. So that way, the parent can see. You can say, okay, it was a 62, but you don't have to take that for a grade. It doesn't calculate necessarily.
Yeah, one of my teachers does this, and we put everything in, but then you'll see the asterisk and it'll say not calculated grade, so that they see, like we like to do progression checks, like on quizzes, and then we'll do 4 throughout the unit. They'll take all 4 of them to see how they do better around everything. And so we'll really just hit that don't calculate, and so parents can see, okay, it's not in the grade, but this is how they did it. So it helps.
I mean, imagine each teacher could tell this, but I wonder just the kids that have the zeros or whatever, are they here and in class pretty much regularly, or are they just missing?
A lot of this type of attendance, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're attacking
There's,
that.
I'm sure.
Yes.
So many factors, yeah, attendance first period, you know, those that are late and those hours.
Yeah, I was just, in the whole scheme, we're looking at the student, but where is the resource behind the scenes? Like, I know Ms. Barnes, I only got one, so I try to stay on top of everything, and I'm really engaged. Are we engaging the parent to see, because our kids, Black and brown, we have a whole different scope outside of the school building. And if the parents are, the majority of them have to work, I have to work, but I'm at a level where I can have some flexibility. A lot of parents don't. So are there resources for them that we're engaging the whole student as well as the home life? Because home life sets the standard for a lot of things. We don't know what they're going through in their home life, why they can't get to school on time, why they're not engaged. When they get here, their mind might be something else. Maybe they didn't eat, maybe it's no food in the house, maybe it's a lot of factors. So are we trying to help the whole student and figure out, because if we get them on a path and see that somebody does have my son, you know, he wasn't doing right, but I started to motivate him and I started to speak to him, and it's baby steps. We say baby steps, but it has gotten a lot better. I've seen a change from 5th grade up to now he's in the 10th because I'm staying with him, I'm walking with him. And so I understand a lot of parents are not like me, they're not engaged. And some are fearful because I'll tell you, when I started this process, I was scared of just how I was treated as coming in and just asking questions or trying to figure this out or talking to teachers. It was scary and a lot of attitude and a lot of, you know, pushback that I've got. But as I start to just I'm just holding your hands, we're gonna keep down this road because I have to get you to college. That's what you told me you want to do. I have to be working 50-50. The school system is helping and I'm helping, I'm getting you there. And if a child doesn't have that and they don't see that somebody is there behind them saying, you can do this, they will not do it. And I understand that every parent is not like me and everybody doesn't have the same resources that I have. But we're a village, and that's right, my son has a village. He has a village behind him, and we have to keep pushing them. We have good days, we have bad days. Last year was, to me, and my mind, was not a good year, but it was his first step into high school, and he was not used to having A classes. And when he started getting behind, and I was like, what are we gonna do? So I stepped in and he worked on Saturdays. He wouldn't do anything else. I said, you just gotta work it. Even if he gets the grade cut back, as long as you have a grade up in a 0 in the book, and we kept working, and I was like, you can do this. And if nobody is pushing you, or you don't have someone there that tells you or knows, or you feel that they love you and you can do this, they're not gonna do anything. And so it's the whole, we're looking at the whole child. Have we talked to the parents? Because I know a lot of parents might not be receptive, or they might not feel comfortable coming in because their educational level is not, they might not even graduate from high school. So just reaching out and seeing what the issue is, maybe we can get a better mindset of the student and why they're not turning in your work, or why you're not getting to school on time, or why. I always have to look for the why, because in the small picture, we can say, they're just not doing it. And we're just gonna push them to the side. But when they see that somebody cares and you hold their hand, I remember when my son wasn't doing something in one of his late class in middle school, and his teacher was like, I would drop him off at 8 in the morning, he would get there early. And one day he told him, he said, Carson, I know you can do this. I have belief and faith in you. And he started to cry. He came home and he cried. He was like, Mama, he actually really cared about me and my success in his class. So that in that spectrum, are we doing what we can to touch the whole student? To see what the issue is of maybe why, and some people can speak things on you, like, you're never gonna do it. And then they plant that seed and they never do it. They're not motivated to do it. A lot of kids aren't nowadays, not self-motivated by, just a thought or just you telling me to do it, so.
Yes, Ms. Rivera.
There was this change, it will be more for the teachers to, or common knowledge for the teacher, or it's going to be that everybody would know, like the children, they come with the expectation that at least they're going to be 60, or that's something for the grading for teachers.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it would be a whole school.
The whole,
There would have to be a-
everybody
it would
would
have to be
know.
a- Oh, yeah, it would have to be a whole school decision, or whole school buy into it.
So it's not going to be only confidentially for teachers. It's going to be common, like maybe the children in the other district or other schools say, I would prefer to go to Midtown because at least I'm going to be at 60. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
something that the teacher say, let me do it this way.
Right, the consistency is key to anything here. When I first came, it was all over the place, the grading, and, I've always been a one grade a week person ever since I really started being a principal. And because I think it's important, that consistency, and kids need to know where they are. Parents want to know, especially in a highly involved community, parents want to know. So when I first got here, there were some classes where kids would have 4 grades in a semester. And that is completely unacceptable because the pressure that puts on the 4 assignments it was really crazy. And so 4, 5, 2, and then, or the kids would have no grades and all of a sudden December 1st, teacher would put in like 5 grades. And so it's impossible to fix that at that point. It's not. So we've got some great practices in place here. If we were to decrease, because we have to write a site-based fiscal decision for decreasing the number of grades required in a semester, because it is the expectation 1 a week. That's the APS policy. If we thought about doing that, we really, as a school, have to have a discussion about that. What are we taking for a grade? Which we've started this discussion, and it's, you think as a principal doing this as long as I have, that I'll just say 9th grade lit, that you think all the 9th grade lit teachers or classes are doing the exact same thing. That is not true. I'm just using that as an example. Use an algebra that you think, okay, they're all taking this assignment for a grade. They're all going to count, and then you find out, well, that's what we decided in the PLC, but then you go back to your question and do something different. Or some people are doing test corrections and some people are not. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a huge thing. You're letting kids redo test questions, not like the whole test, like 4 or 5, then you're adding that to the grade and some are not. That is completely not okay. And you would think you think at a school like Midtown is very high, it just, this is why I have to talk about this stuff, because it requires constant care. That I have to be looking at this all the time, because you bring in new people, and in 6 years, half the staff is different in 6 years. So you have to talk about this all the time. And you have to talk about, well, you can't really bring your own philosophy. This is not a private, Ivy League college. This is a public school that the parents depend on us to do the right thing, and so, that's why we have to talk about this all the time. And even if nothing comes out of this discussion, it's a good discussion to have. I talked about it with the student government 2 weeks ago. We had a really great discussion about that, and they were very clear, the students, and pointed out unfair practices that were relevant, that were absolutely true. Some things that were disturbing to me, So, just, I always have to think about it. We have to talk about it, always.
Well, I was wondering if there is a compromise and a way to do some sort of pilot program. The compromise, kind of to Desi's point, back in my day, a 60 was a D, it wasn't failing. And I was surprised to learn that a 69 is failing in APS. If the minimum grade's a 40, no, that is a low grade, but it doesn't put you in such a deep hole that you can't get out of. So I do wonder if there is a minimum, if there's a magic number that can help address these concerns. And given that the research seems to be on both sides, if there is some way to do a pilot program, I don't know. I don't know if you could do it in one grade or for one semester, and then analyze the data and see if it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, we could definitely analyze data. We could do it even without, maybe we could just look at, right, who's below 40, who's, just as a raw data.
I think we're getting to the point of just dumbing it down. And it's not really helping kids. Like, I agree, it's, when you get a 0, it's a hard hole to get out of, but that's the reality of life for a large population of students. So allowing them to be like, oh, well, it's a 40, it's not that bad, or oh, it's a 60, it's not that bad, I don't really care, and then you send them off into the world, because at that point, they may have the GPA to get into a school, and then they get into school and reality hits them, because that's not the reality of the world. So I think that that's really dumbing things down and setting a false standard for students. I think looking at what is available, and there are going to be some students that you can throw the kitchen sink at them, and they're not going to do the work. And that there is a percentage of kids in education that you can throw the kitchen sink at them, and it's not going to matter. They're not going to do it. They're not going to turn in any work. They're just not going to do it. However, there's a percentage of kids that when you do throw the kitchen sink at them and you do provide them with some support, they will rise to the occasion. And sometimes, it's a bit of tough love for some, that they have to dig themselves out of that hole, because I've had a kid graduate through, well, it was Grady then, but Midtown, and she was in that hole multiple times, and I was like, okay, well, get your boots on, let's start digging, let's start digging, right? I mean, let's get our hands dirty. But the responsibility is yours. Like the young lady said, she said, it's our responsibility, and we need to be held responsibility for turning in our work and doing the job. That's my job as a mom and as a parent, is to do the work. So that's the same expectation I have for any of my kids. And as I said, I had one that would dig herself in a hole, and it would be a multiple of things, like Dr. Bossman has said. We had teachers that would wait till December the 1st, and they would put all the grades in. And I would be like, well, look, I can't help her if you just put grades in on December the 1st. And now they're getting ready to cut report cards. So that doesn't help me. So then you have the conversation of, well, maybe that's why it's mandated that you have to put a grade in a week. You have to look at the bigger picture, because teachers weren't doing their part. Not all teachers, but some. So then you get to the 25th hour, and then you got, a lot of parents screaming because they're saying, well, I can't help them now because I didn't know. So, that plays into why you have to have a grade every week. But I do think students need to be held responsible. And I think it is insulting to dumb it down and say, and make a minimum lower than what they actually earn. if that is what they earn, they need to see that to understand how to do that.
That's
And just to add on, I feel like a lot of students in a line of 60s on their assignments, then you get to a point where they'll just pick and choose what they want to fix. And when they get to the grade that they want, the rest is still a 60, they're okay. So I think in the end, that brings us to a level of mediocrity that we all just end up okay with. And I think the special thing about the students at this school, because as you mentioned earlier, it's hard to catch back up. And that just shows how hardworking the students here are. And I know that there are students that, are actually struggling. But if we have a support system to really push those students instead of a handout, that could probably be a lot more effective.
And there's so many things that go into it. Then you have the other side of the coin where kids are they're taking 6, 7, 8 AP classes at one time. And some things are choices. Turning an assignment is a choice. Taking 8 AP classes at one time is a choice. That's another discussion. Okay. All right. So this is great discussion on this. And I don't want to vote there. I wanted to first bring it up, just to for everybody thinking about it. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is also something that I would like us to think about as a school, to go to, not to act on right now, but right now, if a student fails a class, okay, they fail a class, they retake it, right? They retake the class, for the most part, it's a grad to make you fail an art class on this side. But, so you retake it, you go to summer school, ABA, whatever. Both of those grades now appear on the transcript. So the failed grade, 49. The recovered grade, say it's world history, you made a 49 in world history, you made a 74 in summer school, or in recovery, the ABA recovery, that kind of thing. So in the same vein, I'm just wondering about, could we, just thinking about a school-based solution where, and I'm not sure, because I have to check the state tuition regulations on this, but could a replacement grade, could the recovery grade replace the failed grade? Yeah, we are not talking about kids that are the high flyers, okay? We are talking about kids that it might motivate them a little bit more for the recovery grade if they knew that the 49 would go away. Again, not talking about kids going to UGA, UNC, we're not talking about that. Scott's, Spelman, we are talking about kids that maybe they could get a 2, maybe the difference of 2.0 or 2.5 that they could get in the tech school. They could, just again, we're just talking about kids that are really struggling. Stacey.
When I was in college, you could do that, but for only one class. You could just keep taking ABA. I mean, you couldn't keep taking a class and then passing it. You only had that chance one time. So maybe if it was like 2 classes or one per year or something like that, then maybe that would.
Well, it would have to be very clearly. I mean, this would have to be like very clear as to, and I think it would just have to be, it's all or nothing. I don't think we can get into, because then the kid would say, well, what are the art class versus math class? There are some NCAA regulations that go into this as well. So, and Bart probably knows better about that than me, but you can't necessarily be considered for NCAA scholarships if you have a good ABA class.
You have to do it in front of the teacher, and even the credit replacement has to be in front of the teacher for NCAA to approve.
So is the content, would you say that, is the content the same? Because, getting the instruction at school every day, all year, or all semester, looks very different than a possible recovery class, because they may just be hitting the high points.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely different. Absolutely. If you're taking a ABA class. Now, a lot of kids just redo the class. I mean, like you failed geometry A the first semester, that next year you take geometry A, like your junior year. Right. lot of kids do that. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the summer, you take you go to summer school, you fail geometry B, which is the second semester. You go to summer school, that next summer, right away, does 5 weeks, you can pass it. Maybe pass the whole semester. So, we're not really talking about the same thing. It's not the same as a face-to-face,
And
so.
I'd say most of the kids I know that are doing credit replacement, they're doing it face to face.
Yeah.
Instead of the ADA. So like, the counselors are putting them in, I'm thinking right now, if they've got biology last year, they're in biology then again this semester with the teacher, so.
Because if you fail biology, and you really struggle, like a lot of the kids you work with, putting them on the ADA, they're not gonna pass. That's by yourself, you can't do it. You can't do it with a teacher, you're not gonna really do that.
It's all self-taught.
Right, that's what I was thinking. So I mean, and that would be part of that requirement, that it maybe has to be a face-to-face. But even then, it may be specific courses, like your core courses that you need on your transcript.
Yeah, graduation, really a graduation core classes, right? Wouldn't be like one health class or something.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't have to talk about that today. It's just something we could bring up next time that I just wanted to think about. I want to check. I didn't have time to really check state of Georgia, because if the state of Georgia says no, then it's just done. I don't need to, and I've done some, I have looked at Fulton County. I looked at even Washington DC. I looked at, tried to do some research last month on it. It's all over the place. So we'll table that for next time. I'll try to do some research on that.
And just to go along with NCAA too, their GPA has to be a certain level too, and it's all a mess. So like, if they're even doing any sports, or they even mention that they want to get cleared by the NCAA, they have to follow those requirements, which is a whole other.
I would never want to penalize a student, sports-wise or scholarship-wise. Okay, let's move into this is our.
So discussion items, there's our timeline. We're here, which is utilizing current data, review and possibly update the school strategic priorities and plan. Based on your year-long CIP plan, which is right here. This is the documents I gave you. It's also up there so you can see it. What are the actions that the school has already completed, and then what data supports the completion of the action step and success criteria, which this kind of goes along with that strategic plan, we've been discussing as well. So that is the first page, on the back of that first page. You just want to read through it real quick. The literacy, smart goals, graduation rate, college and career readiness. You can see at the bottom.
Every
map
school
data.
has the same, the same basic format that we have to make progress on. So you can see some of the things that we're working on. These are our goals.
There's the next page, the strategy 1, which is increase the percentage of students performing proficient or above in American Lit by 2% from 55% to 57%. And we discussed also that last meeting with how we're doing that through the strategic plan. But
Right. So as always, things are complicated. So if you, with this goal right here, the first one about the American Lit, that's 11th grade. Okay, 11th grade, all 11th grade students take the milestone in American Lit. Now, what's interesting in that is at least a third of our kids, if not more, a third of our kids in 11th grade don't take American Lit class. They take AP Lang, okay? So, and those two are not the same. Those classes are not the same. They have College Board has a curriculum for the AP Lang. The tests, the assessments are different, but yet we have to test all 11th graders on state of Georgia milestone test. So the kids are not getting the preparation necessarily based on the curriculum. So, our 11th grade lit teachers, they get very defensive, as I understand completely, about these scores, because we even, so we were supposed to give them unit tests, the 11th grade, all 11th graders have to take these American Lit unit tests. But again, a third to a half are being tested on information they're not taught. So I have raised this to the ELA department, and you know, they're very stubborn about this. When I point this out, that we're testing kids, we're also testing the AP Lang kids on its unit tests that take up to 2 class periods of class time that they're not even being taught material. So that's a problem. That's why you'll see we're not very ambitious with our goal, because I think it's a little, I don't think it's very ethical to be testing kids on things that haven't been taught.
Is this state requirement or
I think it's a state requirement, all 11th graders.
It's a milestone.
It's, well, yeah, I just don't know if, you know, the ones taking AP Lang, if that was a state requirement for all, so yeah, it would be.
The unit tests or the course of American
The-
literature?
Well, no, the fact that they're giving the EOC to all 11th graders when most of our 11 are a third to half are taking.
That's American literature. American literature is a state
Yeah,
requirement, and different systems teach it in different grades. It's not necessarily a junior level
Correct.
class. So I do know that there are some systems that teach American literature in 10th grade, just to avoid that issue. Because then,
Wow.
So then you're saying some kids take the American Lit and the AP Lang. Correct.
correct.
Okay, that's something to think about.
Yes.
Okay. Especially since we've gotten approval, here's just an aside, but if a student takes seminar, which is the 10th grade AP class, if a student takes that going forward for next year, they no longer have to take 10th Lit and AP Sim, because it's the same standards. So that's going to be a whole different thing, but they open up, actually, we could do some American Lit in 10th grade. That's a good, okay, I guess we should think about it. Because I know a number of kids will elect to not take 10th Lit and take something else. They'll want to take something else, you know, so, okay. So anyway, that's just a little side about why, you know, why is that score low, and why are we only saying 2.2%? So that's just a good example.
And to be honest, not being English, I had not even thought that the AP Lang does not match the American Lit. Because it's they show the authors.
Don't ask Kate Carter about it. She will go off on you about it. Right.
Didn't think about that. Okay, so then goal strategy 2 would be increase the growth target category percentage for math scores based on fall 2022 to spring 2023 by 3% from 57% to 60%. And we reviewed the map data last meeting for that first test, and then we have the second one November. Okay, so if we look at that.
And so then all the stuff under that is just what we're trying to do to meet that goal.
Then 3, increase students' average daily attendance by 0.8%. Yes, from 2021 to 2022 attendance rate of 92.2.
We are trying, and we're doing a huge amount of work, contact with parents, huge. Carry stick, incentives, detention, I mean, it is all out all the time, calls, I mean, it is all the time. We had actually really, really good attendance last year. Because last year was very hard for everybody with after COVID coming back, but we did a really good job. I think we can make this for sure.
I'm not gonna open up the earlier discussion, but would one thing to consider if you, whatever, have an 80% attendance rate, your lowest grade is 40, you know?
Right.
Anyway, just as
Right.
when we revisit it, it's something to think about.
Right. I was thinking more like get to go to the dance, but that means. Yeah.
All right, so goal 34, by May 2023, increase graduation rate by 0.5% from 2021 graduation rate. The target is 90.3%. And we were at 86 last year.
Oh, right, for 86, for 22,
Yeah.
for the class of 2022. Yeah. That's gonna be hard to,
Yeah.
yeah. We may have to revise that. We may have to revise that goal a little bit.
Well, yeah, because it's not 0.5%. I mean, these numbers don't add up. If it was only 86% last year and we increased it by 0.5, that would take it, whatever,
Right.
87%.
We were, right, when we wrote this, we, you know, we were gonna be at 86%.
Got it.
We just got there, we just got that information.
So you can
10
still,
days
you
ago.
could update it 0.5% and not have the target.
So
So say it increases by 0.5%.
Yeah, because the target is not the right number.
We just have to update it, yeah.
And then the fifth one is 90% of graduates have clear post-secondary goals. Graduation. That's definitely something that college advisors and senior and the counselors work on. And then last year our Go team came up with these family engagement goals. By March 2023, increased the percentage of families responding positively to the school climate survey question. I attend parent student conferences at my school from 65% to 70%. By March 10th, increased the percentage of families responding positively to I'm involved in the decision-making process at my school. And then establish a family engagement center to enhance the services and care we provide to our parents and families with emphasis on our Spanish-speaking community. We have this. Those are what we're working on. Questions about that? Any of those?
Now it's strategic plan, which we discussed these last time. And we will put the link to the presentation, up on website as well. So we did the first two. This one is equipping and empowering leaders and staff. And as you can see, there was our, value teacher time, directly solicit and active teacher input regarding course selection, and then provide a mechanism for teachers to increase leadership and mitigate burnout. And then here's kind of our action points and how to do that. But I can say as a teacher, we are doing those, especially the first one, because in the field I'm in, that is happening. A lot of teachers who did the AP and they're doing gifted and doing STEAM endorsement and all that stuff. And this one was creating a system of school support, provide necessary and salient resources to enhance teaching and learning, ensure parents and guardians of all Midtown students feel welcome, which goes to the goal, our last family engagement goals, and opportunities to engage with the school, strengthen their ability to support their students, and then increase the diversity of parents involved in school functions and activities. Non-academic discussions, which I think we do a great job of that with all our clubs and organizations. Any questions there? And then are all our CIP goals reflected in our strategic plan? I think we could all say yes, correct? And then we just went over the progress and the data. And then we need to make adjustments, right?
Does anybody see anything that we need to add or?
Oh, the 0.6, 0.5. The graduation rate. Taking out the target of 90.2.
You're already there.
We're at 86. You're 86. Good. And it says to increase by 0.5, but then also in there is the target, which
Does anybody have any questions about the graduation rate? Why would Midtowns be 86 when other? So the graduation rate is not as simple as it sounds. There's, of course, the 4-year graduation rate, there's the 5-year graduation rate. So the 4-year is what I'm talking about, but it is not necessarily like kids that were leaving behind, okay, that didn't graduate, that didn't walk across the stage. It is students that were here in 9th grade, and did they graduate 4 years later from Midtown? Or can we, with all 100% certainty, determine that they went to Decatur High, that they went to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and actually entered a school, got a schedule, then we can say they were captured somewhere else. Okay, so it's not, this is, people think, oh, why is that so low? It is, when they started, and then did they graduate from here in 4 years? Or the summer, you can count the summer as. Now, one of those challenges that Midtown has is just one, well, COVID, okay, we lost a lot of kids. They just disappeared. Okay, after the virtual learning, they didn't come back. We tried to track them down, because that was one problem that's reflected in the decrease. But also, we had a number of students that are in very transient situations. So we have 5 designated shelters where students, they're living there temporarily and then they come to school here. Those students can often disappear. We don't know that they've left the shelter until somebody tells us, or so we don't know that. Then they often leave the state, leave the school system, and then they may pop up somewhere else, but we never know that. So those are counted as dropouts. So what you're seeing is, okay, if our thing is 86.5% graduation rate, that means 13% of our kids are considered dropouts. Now, dropouts can be, we couldn't find them, we never could find them. Dropouts are also if you got your GED in the adult ed center here in Atlanta, that counts as a dropout, which is really too bad. It's that's too bad, because we have done a really good job in the last couple of years of trying to, especially many kids that got behind during COVID and virtual learning, of getting them moved on to get their credential, their GED credential, so that they can move on with their life. And so it's something that I'm kind of proud of, actually, that we are helping kids rather than they just keep slogging along and we're doing recovery all the time. So just know that there's a lot that goes into the grad rate rather than just, why is it Midtown? Why 14% not? We've had really good increases with our Hispanic population with the grad rate over the last 3 years. Really strong, not with our African American population, but not had the increases that we have with Hispanic population. So, but our Black kids were severely hit with COVID and disappearing after virtual. Severely. Our Hispanic students, not so much. As we can talk about this more, but our Hispanic families tend to be very concentrated in a couple of areas here in the district, and they're very supportive of each other, and they don't tend to move, so it's kind of a different dynamic. But anyway, so that's just a little thing about our grad rate. Why it's low. It's lower than I would like. There are many schools that spend a lot of time tracking down. I mean, through social media. But again, it used to be that if we got a records request from a school, that automatically they were captured. It's been changed now to where unless the student has a schedule on SLDS, they were actually scheduled and go to class, that's when we can claim them as, oh, they went to Douglas County. And we can say, oh, they're at Douglas County High School, they're at Chapel Hill, I don't know. But it's definitely Georgia. And so,
And I'll say,
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I was asking, the computer-based system, is it just for Georgia, like
Thanks a
Kyle,
lot.
I couldn't remember. I remember it was, I think it's just Georgia. I don't remember it being local.
Yeah, the longitudinal data system is Georgia, but in terms of cohorts, if Betsy and her team can say, oh yeah, this student transferred to Seattle, Washington, and can show a legitimate transfer. Also remember that special ed students can stay enrolled until into 22, but they still count in the denominator for the cohort. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very important point, that we are, right?
And like,
They're expected to graduate
Yeah.
in their cohort year, but they may not, and so then I'll say they're still dragged for a few, I mean, it's really impossible to go 100%. I mean, some of the smaller schools, I will say, like CSK, is 100%, I mean, but their grade class is like 80 or 60, I mean, it's,
and I came from a school that did do the tracking and, the list was sent out to teachers, the student, so it takes so much work to try to get those off your list, but.
we'll be doing that.
I have a question for special ed students, because they can stay in until they're 22, and as you said, that they still count against. If they are in like your MIOD or your MI, like those particular classes, are those, and they may not be tracked for they may be on GAA. Are they still in that? Does APS still count them?
It's not APS. One thing you have to realize with the way that graduation rate is calculated is federal Department of Education calculation.
Okay.
So the federal DOE lays out how you can count students as being, having graduated or not. In Georgia, because we only have the one diploma, if a student doesn't walk across the stage and earn a diploma, even regardless of what program they're in, they count in that denominator until they earn that diploma. So other states have different diplomas or different ways for students with special needs to earn a diploma of some. So Georgia, that's a Georgia thing in some ways, but this is all laid out by federal policy. So.
Okay, all right. So next meeting, we'll do it in reference to this. We will take action on the school strategic plan and vote on the ranked strategic plan priorities for 23-24 budget discussion. And now, real quick, we have a digital citizenship discussion because we opened it up last week. And so we just need to go to this.
Okay, just quickly, this week is digital citizenship week. It was a little sample with the announcement this morning, but there will be announcements for the rest of this week. There's a YouTube playlist with informative videos about digital citizenship. Ms. Blevins agreed to allow me to do a little segment, not this week, because we don't want it just to be a week-long thing. We want it to be a part of the school culture because kids have the phone in their hand a whole lot. So we want it to be a part of the culture. So we'll try to incorporate it in SEL at least once a week. I did want to add something like a t-shirt contest. I'm still brainstorming that. And I also have a meeting scheduled with our new educational technology specialist who is going to help us get school-wide digital citizenship certification. So if you have any ideas, just give me a shout.
Okay, now we move to the information portion. Here's your STEAM update.
Okay, so for STEAM, we took all the kids that took geometry to the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, and they got to do assignments that were related to the origami exhibit there. We just had our professional development session this week, October 10th, we had a person come in to introduce project-based learning to the staff for why for project-based learning. And we also had the Fine Arts Department chair to come in and discuss how arts could be infused into other subjects and what makes it truly STEAM. The Teen STEAM Team application is ready for rollout, so we'll do that next, this week, probably Wednesday. I went over to Springdale Park. We're gonna try to do some things together with their little STEAM team and our STEAM team. And then, we have a tour set up for True Charter School, which is a STEAM certified school. Also, I have this Madam Butterfly. We had 7 free tickets to see Madam Butterfly, but it's in the afternoon, it's in the evening, it's 7 p.m., but it's November 2nd. So if you're interested in chaperoning or dragging your child to see the opera, just let me know.
All right, thank you, Ms. Taylor. Now we will move to public comment. Okay, so we'll move into public comment. Those wishing to make comment will sign in at the end of the meeting, which she did. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to share with the GO team. Speakers will be timed by a member of the GO team and notified when time is expired. The public comment period is designed to gain input from the public and not for immediate responses by the GO team to the public comment presented. If there are questions or information that you have for the GO team, you may also contact one or more of the GO team members, which I've been in contact with her via email, but I'm going to tell her. All right. Okay, you can unmute yourself now.
2 minutes. Cut, no, cut, time.
I think you're gonna have to unmute it
If
yourself.
you click participants next to their name, you'll have them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Montero.
Check the bottom of the.
Okay, go ahead, unmute yourself again, and now the speaker's up. There we go.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
You're gonna have to type in yes, Mark.
I'm on the keyboard, trying to, and it's not letting me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Let me say start speaking.
You are able to hear me? I see you saying yes in the chat.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Just say speak.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and make my further. Okay, hello, I am Waukesha Howe. I am a recent graduate sister. I am on the Clean Energy Atlanta Committee. I wanted to point out some things for you guys. Atlanta is in the top 5 for the most energy burdened city in the United States. Also, Atlanta burden has forced families to choose between skipping meals, medicine, or taking out predatory loans, which could lead to life-threatening situations to keep their lights on. Why do I say all this? I say all this because the president Congress just passed a recent climate health bill. And Georgia will be receiving a lot of money and they will have a lot of jobs coming down the pipeline. I really do hope you guys are teaching and sharing with the students about the green jobs that is coming. I think this is going to be a great opportunity for the students and the youth in Atlanta Public School. And I want to make this comment so that they can have this on their radars of career opportunity in the future. My name is Lakeisha House. Thank you so much for listening to my public comment, and a great Go Team meeting. Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
Could you ask her to put her email?
I have
Yes.
it. I have it. Did we put it in? Okay. Here, okay, so. All right, does anyone have any announcements? In the meeting, we will meet on November 28th is our next meeting.
I have a quick announcement. The CAP meeting, the cluster advisory team had our first meeting. And it was just an organizational meeting to set up the dates for the future meetings. So there's really nothing substantive to report from that. But tomorrow is the overcrowding high school overcrowding presentation. There's a Zoom session at noon and then an in-person session later that evening. I'm going to attend the Zoom session and I'll send my notes to the Go Team. So if anyone isn't able to attend, I'll send a summary. And then the cluster advisory meeting is Thursday. So our first substantive meeting is this Thursday. So the next Go Team meeting, I'll have a report on that as well.
Thank you. High school meetings are really good. The high school has meetings, but they're really good. It's small and you can give a lot of input, and the district is very interested in input. So it's good. I mean, like last time I did the lunchtime meeting, and there were about 15 people on it, but it's really good discussion. So if you can join, it would be great if you can join it, either in person or Zoom tomorrow. And it's on the website, the APS website, facilities part, but it's good. You can just come for a little bit. It's good.
We have reached the end of our agenda. Is there any additional business at this time? May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Aye, I say aye. All opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, meeting is adjourned at 5:28 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
I don't know. Sunday.
I love that.
Do you have a USB camera so that we could put a USB camera up here and actually like PowerPoint from there so that you can see our organization? Because what we're doing is sparking here so that everybody says this is the Zoom host. Yeah, and then the other things, I don't have like a conference like at Howard, you know, where's at Howard, like she said, you have like a conference mic, so that the mic could be captured. But if nothing else, like so the presentation. We're trying to work with it.
Yes. And that was what I did.
Oh, yeah. And these mine. Okay.
That was how I knew.
Because I'm
Right. Yeah, like, yes, and omnidirectional mic, yeah. Somebody. Well, somebody or order one, I mean, they're not that, they're not like. Apparently, pricey, especially because we're not looking for, you know, for. But these are the partners. Oh, yeah. Bar, you know, so you guys have a little bit. Yeah, and if you're looking for like Howard, you can look on the Howard Go Team page, for their September 16th meeting, so we can kind of see, because we have a USB camera up here, capture the whole room and then have the. And see what picks everybody up.
And then we just have, and then we're images.
No, you log in, you log into Zoom.
This is like the master.
This is the master host.
I don't wanna say.
Yeah, I mean, we have, as long as we get the camera and money.
That's how I remember us having the conversation.
So I'm gonna get a lot of
So I mean, it's sort of biology as well, so I do 2 small groups and partial.
They will.
Needles?
Yeah. I'm on.
Yeah.
It's all from items.
We had to, yeah, last month, yeah, on the 16th, they had the 13th and Friday.
I don't know.
So we kind of had to make sure
Right.
we were locked in and everything. Friday. I know how it ran, how it was. Like, it was a
Yeah,
lot.
she was only 8 hours.
And this is the host, and then it's where you pull up PowerPoint screen.
Yeah, we just need a.
We just need a number
In terms of voting on stuff, you know, like on the.
I will call and find out, but I know that.
and
Right.
Yeah, and that's, you know.
And they